You're watching Let the Quran Speak. And now we look at the story of a captain in Italy who abandoned his cruise ship with passengers still on board, and the ship was doomed. The captain has been the subject of public condemnation. He's also being charged with manslaughter. And we'll be looking at persons in leadership and the responsibility that they have towards their passengers and those under their charge. Now, Brother Shabir, I'm not sure if you've been following that story. Basically, they're having a lot of trouble recovering the missing passengers from the ship. So what is your take on the story and the captain's recounting of the events that led to his leaving the ship?
Well, his story is quite odd. I mean, he says that he actually fell off the ship and miraculously fell into a lifeboat. And this is rather odd. The very fact that he is off his ship seems strange given the history of captaincy. Captains in history have generally been known for their bravery, for their staying with the ship, for their looking after those under their charge and under their leadership.
They're seen as good leaders, I think.
Yes. I mean, it is known historically that with the sinking of the Titanic and other such disasters, that usually the women and children are the first to be let off, and the captain would be expected to be the last man on board, holding the helm and keeping everybody at work to make sure that the best possible outcome can result from that disastrous event.
Mm-hmm. So in contrast, the actions of this Italian captain seem very strange and I guess reprehensible to individuals watching from afar.
Yes, I think this is part of the reason for the negative reaction from the public. From the time the little boys are growing up and they're looking at ships and admiring them as they do trains and planes and everything big and powerful. They admire the captain as they do the fireman and persons of leadership and great skill and courage. So it seems like a slap in the face to get this reaction from the captain.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, we're talking about this sort of imagery and imagination of individuals when they think about captains, but what is the actual responsibility of someone who's a leader? I mean, beyond the imagination and what we might think that they should be doing in that circumstance.
Yes, I don't know if this is always spelled out in constitutions and in job descriptions, but there is nevertheless a public expectation, and when one goes into when one adopts such a position of leadership, one naturally is expected to hold to that sort of level of responsibility. If we look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, we see him as an exemplar in this regard, because he was the recipient of divine revelation. His office is tied to his person. Without him, the revelation would be no more. And so he had every reason for self-preservation. He had every reason for thinking, look, I'm important, I have to preserve myself, I should have guards all around me, and other people should be thrust into situations of danger. I should be in a situation of safety because, look, I'm important, the revelation has to keep coming through me. Yet he was together through thick and thin, neck and neck with his comrades. When the Muslims were being attacked, he was there at the forefront to defend against the attackers. So when in situations of battle, for example, we see that in the Battle of Uhud, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was actually struck with a sword, and the covering of his face, the metal covering, the armor was made of links, and one of the links actually sunk embedded itself into his gum. Or into the side of his face, and one of the companions had to come and try to remove that using his own teeth, and it is mentioned that companion's tooth broke as he attempted to remove that link. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was himself injured in that battle as he was surrounded by fighters from the opposing forces. And that was not the end of it. In the Battle of Hunain, it is mentioned that the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his followers were actually besieged by the enemy to the extent that many thought the situation to be hopeless. But in that situation of hopelessness, he actually rallied his followers around him. He said, "I'm the messenger of God, and there's no doubt about that." And he, in this way, tried to inspire them and motivate them towards action to defend themselves in that situation.
Mm-hmm. So leaders then have a responsibility to, keep things going, motivate individuals, and they're responsible for the individuals around them, not just for themselves.
Yes, the Prophet, peace be upon him, is reported also to have said, "Kullukum ra'in wa mas'ulun an ra'iyati." Each one of you is a shepherd and is responsible for his flock. So a leader then should really think about his responsibility, and people should think about what they're good for and what they're suited for, and be the best they can be, but in what they're suited for. And some people are not suited for leadership because it comes with that sort of responsibility that they cannot bear, so they should take up some other sort of vocation. And those who do go into leadership should recognize that it requires courage, it requires bravery, it requires a certain degree of self-sacrifice for the sake of those who are under you. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself, it is reported, used to seek refuge in God from jubn, which is cowardice. So, we make dua, we make supplication to God, give us this, give us that, save us from this and save us from that, save us from hell, for example. He used to ask God, save me from cowardice, because that, according to another report of one of his sayings, is one of the worst qualities in a person, to have cowardice.
I never knew that the Prophet actually prayed for that, and I didn't realize that was such an important, bravery was such an important characteristic.
Yes, and you can see, especially in his time, I mean, nowadays we have laws that protect all individuals, and most situations don't call for the bravery of the individual because we have systems in place to protect the weak and the downtrodden and all elements of society. But in those days, in the days of the Prophet, peace be upon him, bravery was especially valued because a man had to rise up to the defense of his family. His family could be attacked. He himself could be attacked. Those who have seen the IMAX presentation of this Moroccan scholar traveling to perform the Hajj would remember that he was robbed on the way. He was going to the pilgrimage, but he was robbed on the way. And this is several hundred years after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. What about the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his time, when there were highway robbers ready to attack you? There were opposing clans and tribes ready to maraud and invade and pillage and plunder and rape. So the bravery of individuals, especially men, was especially called for at that time. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself was a brave individual, and he encouraged bravery in individuals in general. But this we can see to be an important trait of leaders in particular.
Mm-hmm. And I guess also for captains, because when we think about their situation, they're not in places where people can get safety and get help easily. They're kind of at sea. Right, so it's the captain who's responsible for protecting individuals.
That's right. When a person, buys a ticket, one buys a position in a cruise ship or whatever it might be, one is really putting one's trust in the whole system that is there, and the captain is representative of that system. So we expect the captain to live up to a certain degree of responsibility there. We're all individuals, and everyone has, family connections and connections with the world. People want to stay alive. People have this inner sense of self-preservation. So that aspect can come out in an individual, but at the same time, the greater feeling and the greater sentiment and aspiration of a person in leadership when his ward is being attacked is really to stand up with bravery and to defend with valor and heroism those who have put their trust in his leadership and in that system that he represents.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Brother Shah.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, we answer questions we've received from you, our viewers.